What's up, Notjust developers? Welcome back to a new live stream. And in this video, we are going to build a local first Trello clone using React Native and Realm. So instead of talking, let me actually show a very quick demo of what we're going to have by the end of this video. So the Trello is a project management tool that you can manage your sprints, your tasks, where you can create these tasks in different columns, and that's what we're going to do. The cool thing about this application is that it's going to work locally first without any internet, without even having to create an account. But we're not going to limit ourselves to local first, because whenever we have internet, we want to synchronize the data from the device storage to the cloud so that you can use the same application on multiple devices and also to collaborate with your team, for example. So even though the focus of today's video is going to be local first, we're going to actually get into the synchronization behind the scenes so that everything is an actual application with online capabilities. Because yeah, that's a very common architecture that can benefit a lot of applications, especially applications that might be used in scenarios where you do not have a strong enough connection or stable enough connection, internet connection. So you want to make sure that your users can use the application even without having internet, can operate, and once they gain internet, everything is synchronized with the backend. For that, we're going to use React Native with Expo on the front end and Expo router for managing the navigation, the screens, and for the backend, for the synchronization stuff, we're going to use Realm, which is currently called Atlas Device SDK. Realm is very tightly coupled with MongoDB, so this is a great solution if you're currently using MongoDB or if you are starting a new project. You're going to see it's quite easy to make this synchronization, and it's quite powerful, especially because we are using MongoDB as the database layer. So without any more talking, I think it's time to get started, so let's roll the intro. So the first step, let's go ahead and initialize our project. And hello everyone who is joining us live. I'm going to open a terminal. Where is my terminal? Here is my terminal. Let me zoom in and let me navigate to the project, to the folder where I keep my projects. I think it should be here. Oh, I think I have to close the window. But while we're here, let's go ahead and initialize the Expo project using npx create expo app. Here, let's call it Trello, and also let's put at latest to take the latest version of Expo. So let's press enter. This is going to initialize our blank project from where we will set up everything, including Expo router for navigation, Realm for our data, and yeah, let's wait a couple of seconds. Meanwhile, I'm gonna close the window because someone is doing some renovation. By the way, guys, look at that. Look what we've got here. This morning, we received the silver button for passing 100,000 subscribers. So yeah, thank you very much, everyone who is watching, who is subscribing to the channel. Your support means a lot to us. And we see that our work is valuable and helps you become a better developer. So if you're not yet subscribed, make sure to hit the subscribe button and help us reach the next milestone. Thank you very much. Let me put it back. All right, so what do we have here? Our project is ready, and I can go ahead and open it in Visual Studio Code. Well, when you see this, your project is ready. Let's go ahead and write code and the name of the project, which is Trello, and this will open it up in Visual Studio Code. We no longer need the terminal. Let's close it. Let's make this visible. And before we get started, what I like to do is I like to switch right away from JavaScript to TypeScript. You don't have to do that if you don't feel comfortable with TypeScript. We're not going to focus too much on TypeScript, but anyway, it's good to have at least some type validation. So to do that, I'm simply going to rename the app.js file to app.tsx. And in the next step, when I'm going to open the terminal and write npm start to start the development server, Expo will ask me, hey, we see there is a TypeScript file. Do you want me to install and set up TypeScript? Let's just press enter. So Expo will take care of all the configuration for us, which is really handy. Now, when we see the QR code, that means that our application is running. We can already start working with it. The easiest way to run an Expo project if you don't have Xcode or Android Studio set up would be to download the Expo Go application on Android or iOS and then simply scan this QR code. That's it. You're going to have your application ready to run. In my case, I'm going to run it here on the iOS simulator by pressing I in this terminal, and this will install it and open it in Expo Go. Just a little note, later in the video we're gonna have to create a custom development build because Realm will have some custom native code, but that's not a problem because it's quite easy to do that, and I'm gonna show you when we get to that. But for now, Expo Go is enough for us to get started and build our user interface. So here is our application. We have the text in the middle. If I'm gonna open app.tsx, we should see this text that is being rendered. So if I'm gonna change it to hello world, without any changes, it should update right away instantly on our device. So that means that we are ready to get started and build our application. Let me check the live chat. Here it is. I'm gonna move it here so that I can see what you guys saying. As always, let us know where are you joining us from and how are you doing today. Hello Edwin, Daniel, Julius, Zohir, Piyush, Iman, Jackie. Hello guys. So excited about this episode. Yeah, me too. I'm very excited about this one. I had a lot of fun preparing it and I think you're gonna love it. It's a nice combination of doing like UI stuff, it's together with data stuff, with handling CRUD operations, with synchronizing everything. So at some point I was thinking also to do some animations like drag and drop, but probably we're not gonna have time, but let's see. Maybe if we have time at the end, we can cover some drag and drop stuff as well. Anyway, let's go ahead and see what would be our first steps in our project. As I said, before we get into the data, we would have to build some UI components to render something, to render our tasks, to render our lists of tasks. So let's start by what? Actually, I'm gonna go ahead and commit these changes. And later on, you're gonna have access to the source code, so you can check like all the steps with the changes that we are doing. So this is going to be init. And now I want to set up a little bit the structure, the folders and the structure of our project. I like to keep everything, all the source code in a separate folder called src. src. And here we're gonna need a folder for components. Here is our components. And I think the first component that I'm going to build is the component that renders one of these tasks on the screen. So one of the tasks, which simply is a text component with some background color on the view. Let's go ahead and start by doing that. So in the components, let's create a new file called, in the components, let's create a new file. Let's call it task list item.tsx. And this is going to be one item that will render one task. A custom component in React Native is a simple function, so let's define it as function. Let's call it the same as the file, task list item. And from this function, we should return something. We should return some JSX, which will represent what do we want to render on the screen. So the things that we want to render will be some components that we are importing from React Native, and these are a view, which is a container, a simple container, and a text that will render the text of the item, of the task. So let's start by rendering the view, and then inside the view, let's render the text, let's say first task. Now we want to make sure that we see this component on the screen. For that, we first have to export this function so that other files can import it. So by doing export default before the function keyword, we are exporting it so that in app.tsx, we can go at the top and do import task list item from source components task list item. Now, instead of this text, which I'm going to remove, I will go ahead and render a task list item like this. First task. Perfect. Let's go ahead and see, style a little bit this task to look more like the task from here. So it's going to have some kind of dark background. The text is going to be white, and maybe we can also do an icon to the right. So to set the background, we're going to go ahead to the container, to the view, and provide some styles here. So style, we will provide an object where we can set background color black, for example. And to make the text white, I'm going to do style color white. Okay, now the background is black, the foreground is white, and this is how you can define inline styles. This is good for in a lot of situations, but I usually, especially if your file is quite long, it's recommended to separate the styling from the rendering logic. To do that, we have the style sheet component, style sheet API, that we can import from React Native, and using the style sheet at the end of a file, we can define an object that will hold all our styles. And we do that by doing stylesheet.create. And here we're gonna, in this object, we have to define different styles that we have in the component. We can name them the way we want. So one of them will be the container, will be empty, and text also empty. Now I can move the background color style from inline to the container, the text style also to the styles. And the last step is to simply connect or send to this style property styles.container. So pay attention that I'm removing a pair of brackets because we no longer define an object, we are accessing it. So styles.container, and here again styles.text. Perfect. So to style it a little bit more, probably I'm going to go to app.tsx, and I think I'm going to probably remove this align item center and justify content center because these are centering everything in the middle of a screen. If I remove them from here, it's good, but now the task is all the way to the top of the screen and it's behind the notch and it's not visible really well. So to fix that, I'm going to import a component called safe area view from React Native, and I'm going to replace the root view in our application with a safe area view. Now everything inside the safe area view will be rendered inside the safe area, so not behind the notches or stuff like that. So now the first task is nicely rendered at the top. Let's go to the task list, and maybe we're gonna add like some padding, padding 10, to make sure that there is a bit of spacing around it. Going back to app.tsx, maybe we should give here some padding as well to add some container. Yeah, if I add padding here, we need to apply it to content, or what? How is it? Style. Well, we cannot apply this padding directly to the style of a safe area view. I was expecting it to have content style, but something is wrong. So maybe I can put it simply in another view only the task list item that will have a style and simply with an inline padding like 10, so that we have some spacing around the edges as well. And I will remove it from here. Okay, back to the task list item. What else do we need here? Of course, border radius to the container, 5 to make the corners round. And I think I'm gonna grab the actual color that I was using there. And the color was this one. So instead of black, I'm gonna use 1D2125. And this is a dark blue. Okay, perfect. Lastly, when it comes to the task list item, we had that X button at the end. If we look here, we had this X icon. So this is going to be a simple icon that we can get from by going to Expo vector icons and by searching here, I don't know, close. So let's take this end design icon and it shows us how to import it. I'm going to import it at the top inside task list item and I'm going to render it after the text component here. Instead of color black that is not very visible, I'm going to use a color, I don't know, a very light gray or simply gray. Yeah, gray looks good. And I'm gonna leave the default sizing or maybe size 16 is going to be good. But the thing is that now the X button is right underneath the text, which is not what we wanted. We wanted to put the icon and the text in the same line. So we can accomplish that by changing the justify direction of a parent container. So by simply saying justify flex direction, by changing it to row, this will put the child items into the same row. Now the X is to the right of the text. And if we want the X to go all the way to the other side, we can manage that using the justify content space between. And that will put all the space available in this container between the items. And this way we move one to the left, one to the right, and now it looks much better. So that's good. That's perfect. Maybe more spacing, like 15. I don't know. Should I increase the text size to font size 16? Maybe. Let's see how it will look like this. Okay, so just like that, we have a task list item. The next step is to be able to send data to this task list item that will be rendered here, because if from app.tsx we will want to render multiple tasks, they will all say first task. What I want to do is I want to be able to send from here that the first task is going to be an object with that description of first task, and then the second one is going to contain data about the second task, which is going to be second, and here we're gonna have third. This is how we send data down from the parent component down to the child component. Not third, but also task, sorry. So the name of a property that we are using is task, and the value is the object that we are sending here. Now, how do we get access inside task list item to the properties? We do that as the first parameter of the function, and here we can right away destructure the property that we are interested in using its name. So if it's task here, we're gonna destructure it using the name task. Now this is going to be the property called task, and we can render instead of this hard-coded string, I'm gonna use the brackets and I'm gonna render task.description. And just like that, all the tasks that we are rendering there, they're rendering different descriptions. First, second, and third task. This will allow us to send different data and render it the same way on the screen. Okay, that's good. Let's move on. And the next step for us is going to be to render one of these containers that represents one list. And I'm talking about the dark black background container. That container has a title with the name of a list. It has the list of the actual tasks. And at the bottom, we're gonna later have an input where we will write the new tasks. So let's do that. And I'm going to implement it as a separate component. Let's do new file. Come on, new file is going to be task list dot tsx or tasks list. Let's do it's okay. Task list. It's okay. Let's go ahead and start by defining the component and right away exporting it. So export default function task list. And the task list will return something. It will of course start with a container. So let's import a view and a text from React Native. And let's render the view here, and inside it, let's render the text. And this is going to be the title of our list. For example, to do. Okay, let's go ahead and import this task list inside our app.tsx. And I'm going to do import task list from source components task list, and let's render it. We're gonna render it here at the top. Let's go with that. Now we see the to-do items there, and the next step is actually I want to move the list of tasks that we are rendering from here all the way. Maybe the task list component should be inside this view with padding. And now I will move all of these task list items from here inside the task list. This is going to be the list of tasks. Let's do it like this. Don't worry about the TypeScript issues yet, we're gonna fix them shortly. But yeah, I see that we forgot to import task list item from this folder task list item. And the name of this component should be task list. Why did I call it item? That was my bad. Now with this, we have a title of a list and we have a list of items. And later we're gonna add on the bottom here the new task input. Perfect. Let's go ahead and see what should we do here. Well, first of all, let's make the background color of our task list dark gray or dark black. And I'm gonna do that right away here with inline styles background color. Let me check the exact color to make it look really nice. It's 101112. I will go ahead and add some padding, maybe like 10, so that there is some spacing around. And yeah, that's good enough. The problem is that now the title disappeared because it's rendered with black text. So I'm gonna go here and give it a style of color white. It appeared, and let's go ahead and increase its weight to bold, and maybe even the font size to 20, and maybe some margin vertical to separate it a little bit from the list, 10. And just like that, we have it properly set up. The whole container, of course, should also have border radius. So let's do border radius 5 to make it to have a little bit round corners. And yeah, that already looks better. Now, speaking about the list of tasks that we're rendering here, I don't want to render them manually like this. I want to dynamically render them based on an array of tasks that we're gonna have. To do that, we have a component in React Native called flatList. And a flatList helps us render lists of items. So let's render the flatList above our items here. And there are two things that a flatList expects. It expects the data, and the data should be an array. Let's right away go here and define the list of tasks as a state variable. If you are new to React Native and state is still new to you, I'm gonna explain it shortly. If you are more familiar with it, like probably it's easy. But we're going to use the state because whenever the list of tasks changes, whenever we add a new task, we want to re-render and update the UI. So let's start here with an empty array. And the useState returns us back two values. The first one is the actual value of our state, which we will call it tasks. And the second one is setTasks. Let's go ahead and use these tasks in the flatList as the data. And for the render item, this is a function that will tell flatList how should it render each item in that list. So this function will receive the item and should return the UI component that we want to render. What do we want to render? Well, we want to render one of these task list items. And instead of hard coding the task that we send here, we're gonna send right away the item. Now, from this flatList, if I'm gonna comment out these two things, the flatList is not rendering anything. That's because our tasks state is currently empty. I'm gonna go ahead and add here one default value with description, or I'm gonna copy it from here. Description. Let's do first and second. And I can even remove a comment from here. And now our flatList properly displays the tasks that we created in our state as a task list item component. Perfect, that's good. If we want to add some spacing between these tasks, you could do that from the item list by adding some margin to the container. But in these situations when we have lists, the best way to manage the spacing is using the gap property. It's going to help you like with some weird issues that can happen with spacings. So I'm going to send to the flatList a content container style, which is going to be the style applied to the component that wraps around all our task list. So by sending their gap 5, it's going to add 5 pixels spacing between the items, and you can even do more if you want. So 5 probably is enough. So now they look even better. Perfect. Maybe I should go ahead and do git add, git commit minus m task list, because at this moment we have two components completed. We have a task list that renders a list of tasks and the task list item that renders one of these small tasks. Perfect. The next step is going to be the input. Let me check the comments. Hello from Venezuela. Hello, German. Greetings. From your experience, these types of applications are best work with Realm or with Amplified Data Store. Which of the two technologies is better for you? Well, let me tell you this. Like, this is kind of the first time I'm working with Realm. I have experience with working with MongoDB. So MongoDB itself is a really great database solution. However, it's very specific in terms of how you filter, how you fetch. So you have to learn the MongoDB way of doing things. This will also show us in Realm as well, because some filters are very specific to MongoDB. But yeah, I believe like it's a very good solution for running this kind of local first applications. Why are you using TypeScript but not using typing? Because I don't have like a lot of time to type perfectly everything in this demo, because that would take me too much time during the live stream. And sometimes I'm just letting TypeScript infer the types, and this will help us a bit later when we define the schema of our database. TypeScript will automatically be able to infer that type, and it will add some benefits. So what I'm telling our students from the academy is, if you're using TypeScript, it's okay at the beginning to have issues. It's okay not everything to be perfectly typed. So whenever you have like some issues, some red warnings, try to fix it. But if you cannot, like continue. Like if it's working, it's okay. It's still better than having everything untyped. So that's small advice. Bruno is asking, is there a way to make UI in React exactly as it would be done using native? With iOS 18 coming out, how can we ensure UI modification align with the new OS? So from this comment, I assume that you asked, is there a way to make UI in React Native exactly as it would be using native? And the answer is absolutely yes, and that's the benefit of using React Native, because React Native is not reinventing these components. It's not rebuilding them to look like native components. It's actually using native components. It's a simple mapping between a JavaScript and native components. So every time, for example, with iOS 18 coming out, every change that is happening on the native side components, they are automatically handled like in React Native without us having even to update our application. This is happening because behind the scenes we are using the native components. So that's the benefit of React Native compared to Flutter, which is trying to recreate all the native components. Why not do local with Watermelon DB? Actually, I asked this as a poll on our YouTube channel, because when it comes to local first application, there are so many solutions that you can choose from, and it really depends on the other things that you are using. For example, it depends on the backend that you are using, because if you have a SQL backend, probably there is a better solution compared to Realm. If you're using MongoDB as a database, Realm is perfect. If you're starting a new project, Realm is a very good solution. So this is not like the only way to build local first application. This is a way to do it. And in the poll on YouTube that you guys have voted, 648 of you voted, more than half of you wanted to see a Realm tutorial. So that's why I listened to you, I listened to the community, and we built that one. Watermelon DB was the second one, and maybe we should do a tutorial on that as well. And yeah, this is quite an interesting topic, and I think you can expect more tutorials about this local first approach in the future. But let's go ahead and continue our tutorial. And what I want to do now is, from the task list, after the flat list, I want to add here the new task input. To handle the new task input, we will use a component from React Native called text input and another one called button. Let's start by rendering the text input. And you might not see it there, but if we add here a placeholder, new task, you still will not be able to see it because the placeholder has a dark gray color. So I'm going to change the placeholder text color to gray. Yeah, gray is already better. And if I go there and start typing, it's gonna have some text, but the text is black. So I'm gonna go to the style and say that the color of the text should be white. And now the color is white. Also in the style, let's go ahead and add here some, I don't know, padding, like 10, to add some spacing for it. Maybe we should style it in a similar way as we have a task list there with a background color like this. Let's try background color like this. To add spacing between the list and this one, I'm tempted to use a margin here, but I think it would be better if I go to the parent component and say that there should always be a gap of 10 pixels between all the components here. So that's already better. For the text input, maybe a border radius of 5. Yeah, that's good. Should the gap here also be 5 to match the other gaps? Yeah, probably that's better. Okay, and the padding here 10, is it similar? No, on the item is 15, so maybe we should do it 15 as well. And if I delete it, it says new task. And if I have it here, we are writing the information for the new task. Now, after the text input, let's go ahead and render a simple button with a title add task. As you can see, this is what I'm talking. Like, this button is rendering a native button, and on iOS it looks like this, but on Android it will look differently. It will have like a full background because that's the native button on Android. So if you're testing on Android and it looks different, that's perfect. That's what we want to have when we are working with native components. And when we press this button, let's do one press. Let's do create task. This should be a function that we will define in our component here, and let's do const create task equal, and I'm gonna start by doing console warn create. If I press the button, at the bottom we should see the warning, which means that we connected it with this function. But how can we get access to the information that the user wrote here in the text input? Well, for that, at this moment, this is an uncontrolled text input. We are not controlling the value. The text input behind the scenes is doing that. To transform it to a controlled text input, we're going to have to use a state variable where we will store the information that the user is typing. So let's use a useState with an empty string from initially. That is going to be called new task. And the setter will be set new task. So having these two fields, we are going to send both of them to the text input. The first one is going to be sent to the value this way, not tasks, but new task. This way, the text input will always render what we tell it to render. At the moment, if we're going to try to type something, it's not going to change because we are not updating the new task. The second thing is on change text, which is a callback function, and we can assign the set new text. This way, when the user types something and the text input detects that text change, it will call the setter and will provide the new value, this way updating the new text task state variable. Now, in the create task, I can console log here the state variable called new task. And if I go here and write something and press add task, we see that we have access to this value. So I don't know what, later on we're gonna handle like actually creating it. For now, I'm going to do and reset the state of our input to an empty string. So after creating a new task, it becomes empty. Maybe for now, what we can do is simply add it to the existing list of tasks. Later on, we're going to do it completely different, so we can skip this one, but just for us to see something happening on the screen, we can go ahead and update the tasks list using all the previous tasks by spreading them like this, and then adding a new one with a description of the value that the user wrote here. And not task, but tasks. Now, if I'm gonna do hello, press add task, it's going to be added to the list and the input will move down one step. Just like this, it adds in the list. Perfect, but after we are going to reload the application, we lose track of the state. And that's where we're gonna work, that's what we're gonna work on in the next step, to make this local first and to have like a local database that is going to persist this data and later on synchronize it with the cloud so that whenever we add these tasks to the list, they are persisted first locally, and if you close and open the application, they will still be there. And then we're gonna connect it and synchronize with the cloud, with a backend. So that's good. That's our, maybe I will remove a console log from here. And I think I'm going to spend 2 minutes extracting these styles into the style sheet, just to make this file easier to work with. So let's go ahead and import style sheet from React Native. Let's define the styles at the bottom of the screen. Styles equal style sheet.create. And the first one is the container. So I'm going to copy it from here. I'm going to cut it from here and do styles.container. Now I have to go back here and provide container and paste the styles that we copied from there. I'm going to do the same process for the text. For example, this is going to be styles.title, copy it from there, move it to title here. And this is going to be the input, styles.input, copy it from there, add it as an input here. Make sure not to add double brackets as I did right now. And everything now is styled properly. And things like small like gap, like I will leave it here because it doesn't add a lot of like garbage in our code. And now it's much easier to look at this component. We can fit basically the whole rendering logic on one screen, and we see that, hey, we have a title, then we have a flat list, then we have a new task input. Perfect. So let's go ahead and do git add, git commit -m. This was new task input. Enter. John is saying he did a watermelon DB tutorial in November day 22. Actually, yes, I did that. But to be honest, I failed quite miserably integrating it. So I don't highly recommend watching it. I think I should prepare better for that. I had some issues with Watermelon DB with configuration, and I don't remember if I actually managed to solve them till the end. But I saw that a lot of people are watching and taking value, so maybe it's valuable to see how I struggle there with configuration issues and so on. But that was my experience. And yeah, I would have to look more into that to see how to properly prepare a tutorial for it. Aditya, hello, how are you doing? So, what I want to do now, before we move to the next step, is to add this nice background gradient and so on. That is going to be the last step at this moment when it comes to the user interface. And then we're going to go into setting up Expo router, and then we're gonna start working with Realm. So what I want to do is, if I look in the app.tsx, At the moment, we're rendering inside the app.tsx, we are rendering the task list. When we think about the task list, later on in our video, the lists will be part of one board. So a board will have multiple lists. So that's why I'm going to go ahead and extract this task list together with this view into a separate component. At this moment, it might seem minimal, but it's going to help us later like separate concerns. Like this is a board, then this is a list, and then this is a list item. So let's go into the components and do a new file called taskboard.tsx. Here, let's export default function taskboard, and it will return. I'm gonna copy it from app.tsx. I will copy this view that has padding and the task list. I'm gonna copy it from here, move it to our board in the return statement. I mixed the arrow function there. And I should make sure to import the view from React Native and the task list, import task list from .tasklist. Now we lost everything on the screen. That's because in the app.tsx, we should go ahead and import the board, task board, and render it here, task board, like this. Now our app.tsx is very minimal. It only renders the task board and handles like things like save here review, status bar, and so on. But when we talk about the functionality of our project management board, like everything is in separate components here, together with the task board and later task list and list item. Okay, perfect. And I wanted to do that because I want to add like some kind of more interesting background. As you can see here, I'm using a gradient. So let's go ahead and use Expo linear gradient, which you can find here in the Expo documentation. And we can install it using npx expo install expo linear gradient. This library allows us to render gradients, so let's go ahead and install it in our project. This is of course optional, but it will make it look much better. And then what we can do is we can render the gradient somewhere here. I'm going to import the gradient as per the documentation. So import by destructuring linear gradient from expo linear gradient, and then to render it, we can take this linear gradient and do it above the task list. It has this styles background, but what I want to do here is I want to render it with absolute position, absolute, top 0, bottom, and make sure that it covers the whole background. Bottom 0, left 0, right 0. So just like that, our linear gradient is rendering behind our task list. If I comment it out, we should see it here. Bottom. And it's not exactly what we want. We're gonna get there. But usually when we want this kind of absolute things that will stretch and fill the whole page, a shortcut instead of doing this would be using style sheet, imported from React Native. And the style sheet has a handy property called absolute fill. So if we do that, this will absolutely fill the whole parent container. And it doesn't fill the whole page because our parent view should have here a flex 1 to make sure that it fills the whole screen. So now we have a gradient that goes from this color to transparent, and we're gonna change it to the following colors. Where? Yes, these are the colors. So from let's say purple to blue, and now it looks much better. But because our task board is rendered inside the safe area view, as you can see, we still have white lines at the top and the bottom. So most probably I'm gonna go back to app.tsx, and I'm going to go back from safe area view to a normal view so that the background fills the whole screen. And I will uncomment the task list, and most probably now the task list is going to be rendered not where we want it. So we can simply render maybe it here using a safe area view and the task list inside the safe area view. So just like that, the linear gradient is expanding on the whole screen, even beyond the safe area, and our content is wrapped around the safe area view to be displayed in the safe area. So just like that, we have it with nice background. And last thing I want to do is going to app.tsx. For the status bar, I'm gonna change this to light to make the battery color and all the icons at the top with white. And now everything looks perfect. I really like it, and I think we have it like beautiful enough to continue working. So this was our yeah, I was thinking already ahead, but we're gonna get there. So this was our git commit task board linear gradient. Perfect. Bruno is asking, could you create an app with React Native Visions, Vision Pro? Sorry. Do I need a Vision Pro to do that? Or would I be able to use a simulator? I think the Xcode has like the simulated experience, right? Okay, looking good so far. So, if you're just joining the live stream, today we are building a local first Trello clone, a local first project management application. So far, we have handled the user interface of a simple to-do list. In the next step, we're gonna set up and configure Expo router to be able to have multiple pages like the detailed page of one task. And the next step is going to be to cover the local first approach to include our local database using Realm, and later on synchronize it with the cloud. Okay, that sounds like a plan, and we can continue working. Let me just check my to-do list. Yes, the next step is set up Expo router. Perfect. Let's go ahead and do that. Expo router, we're gonna use Expo router for the navigation logic. And Expo router is a file-based navigation system. If you're not familiar with this, I'm gonna explain it shortly, but simply put, it allows us to create files, and Expo router will handle the configuration and creation of the screens automatically for us. This is very simplified because on top of that, it adds a lot of other benefits like automatic deep links and so on. But yeah, it also, the good thing is that it's built on top of React Navigation. So everything that you know and are familiar from React Navigation for configuration and so on, you can do and apply inside Expo router as well. So let's go ahead, open the documentation from Expo for Expo router on their website, and let's go right away to the installation guide. We didn't start with a template, so let's go ahead under the manual installation, and let's go right to the second step to install dependencies. These are all the dependencies that we need. Let's copy them. Let's move to our project, and let's install the Expo router dependencies. I'm gonna go back to the documentation and see what's the next step. The next step is to set up the entry point. The entry point is the first file that is being executed when the application is launching. That we can set using package.json. At the moment it's the app entry from Expo, and to work with Expo router, we are going to use Expo router/entry. Moving forward, we need to add the schema of our application. This is used for automatic deep links, and this should be done in app.json file, and you can add it right under the name. You can use it, I don't know, my Trello. And this is going to be used as the deep link, as the schema for the deep link. Okay, moving on to the next step. We're not developing for web. Maybe we're gonna do test it to see if Realm is working on web as well. I haven't tested it yet. So yeah, let's go ahead and install this because it's not gonna cost us anything. So in the terminal, I'm gonna also install React Native Web and React DOM. And what else? This is, as far as I know, is the default one already. And we should go to the step 5 to modify the Babel config to have Babel preset expo, but it's already there. So if I go here, preset expo is here. And I think we are ready to start, but we need to restart the server with the -c word --clear. So let's go ahead and move to the previous terminal where our server is running, or our development server is running, and let's stop it by pressing Ctrl+C or Alt+C, I don't know. And here I'm going to run it with npm start and -- clear. So yes. And now if I'm going to maybe close Expo Go and press I here to open it again, what we will see, don't press anything yet. Let's just follow together because that's a bit the important part. We should see this welcome to Expo screen. This screen is displayed whenever we do not have the app directory. The app directory in Expo is a very important directory because that's where we keep all our screens. So instead of touching this button that will set up the app directory in the root folder, what I want to do is I want to open source folder, and inside source I want to create this folder manually called app. And inside the application, as I said, we're gonna keep all the screens, and the first screen is our home screen. The home screen is the index.tsx, and here we're gonna do, let's say, export default function home screen. Let's return, and by returning something here, it will automatically render when we navigate on the home screen. What do we want to render here? Well, let's open app.tsx and see what do we have rendered there. So most probably I think we're gonna render this kind of the task board. I'm not even gonna think more about that. Let's simply render the task board here and import it from components. Now with a simple reload of application, I hope it's going to pick up this folder. If not, we're gonna have to restart the server again. But as we can see, it actually in fact picked it up correctly and rendered it here. Where do we set this status bar? Previously it was set on app.tsx, and the app.tsx was not only the entry point, but it was also the component that was wrapped around all the components, all the screens in our React Native application. Now, the app.tsx is no longer used, and in a moment we're gonna delete it, but let's think of where we are gonna have like this kind of global configuration, global settings. You might think that we should do it in index, but that's not the case, because the index.tsx inside our application, that's simply the home screen. That's the page that is rendered only when we navigate home. If we navigate to another screen that we're going to develop later, it's not going to be rendered the index. For that kind of things, we have layout files, and the layout files are exactly for this purpose. The layout files are files that are being shared between all the screens inside a folder. So if we are defining this underscore layout.tsx, the name is very important, it should be underscore layout. And if we are going to export default function, and this is going to be called root layout. If we return something here like, I don't know, a text, hello, import text from React Native, what we're gonna see is that we see the text hello, and we no longer see the home screen, even though we are on the home screen. That's the thing, that the layout is supposed to wrap around components, wrap around the screens inside the folder. Now we are simply overriding what is rendered there. So if you want to have a shared component there, like a text like this, if I do here style, margin top 100 just to see it, we see it here, hello. If we do render some kind of components here, we should also make sure to render the screen that we are supposed to see. So I'm gonna put it inside an empty fragment, and below the text we can render a component called slot from Expo router. What this will do is it will render the text on all the screens inside our application, and it will render the slot which becomes the screen. So this slot is basically replaced with our home screen if we are on home screen, and will be like different screens when we will add more. So this is our layouts that are being rendered, that are wrapping all the screens inside a specific folder. And these are where we set like how do we want the screens to look. If we have some shared components, for example, think about of a tab bar. We have like the tab bar that is a shared component, so that would go into a layout file. I was explaining about layout because layout, now this layout from the app directory, this is the root layout because it will be wrapped around all components. So that's where we can go ahead and take that status bar light. I'm gonna copy it from here and I'm gonna put it in the root layout and make sure to import it from React Native. It's not from React Native, right? The status bar is from Expo status bar. So in the layout, it's not from React Native, it's from Expo status bar. Yes, now it works better. But there is the white background. I mean, we actually don't need the text. Now it looks better. And yeah, for now, I think we can go with it. Yeah, I'm gonna explain about stack navigators in a moment. So slot, a simple component that means that, hey, render the page code, the code of a page that we are on. So in this case, we are on home screen, so render the taskboard. Okay, perfect. Moving on with the Expo router setup. What I want to do next is whenever we press on one of these tasks, I want to go to the detailed page of that specific task. So let's go ahead and do that. And we need it as a separate screen. A separate screen can be here called details.tsx. And it should actually export a component. So I'm going to generate a very task details component, export it here. And yes, the screen is already there, but how do we navigate to this screen? Well, we can do that whenever we press on the task itself. So let's go ahead in the task list item. And I'm gonna start with a simple approach and then slowly show you the actual way to do it. So we need to link from task list item to the details page. For that, we're gonna use a component called link from Expo router, and I can go ahead and wrap our text, the description of our task inside the link, and the link needs an href, the URL to which we want to navigate. The URL to which we want to navigate is going to be called /details. So now if I'm gonna go ahead and press not on the component itself, but on the text, we should be navigated to the details page. At this moment, we cannot go back, so I'm gonna press R 2 times to reload. But anyway, the linking is working. But how do we... So far, we simply created a file. Expo router set up the screen for us. And using a link, we are navigating there when we click something. But the thing is that we want to wrap our whole component in this link, not only the text. So I'm gonna move it so that the root view is inside the link. We lost the styles, but we kept the functionalities. To get back the styles, what I want to do is I will pass here a property to the link called asChild. This will make sure that the link will use the child component as the root component that will render. So now we have the styles back, but we lost the functionalities. Why? Because when having asChild, the child component, which in our case is view, should be able to handle press events, should have an on-press property. A normal view doesn't have that, so that's why we cannot navigate any longer. To fix it, we're gonna replace the view with a component called pressable, imported from React Native. So let's take pressable, replace our container view with pressable, make sure the closing tag is also pressable. And now, if I click, it should navigate there. Perfect. Okay. Slowly we are discovering more things. So the linking here is okay. Let's go back to the layout. The thing is that I want to be able to go back from this screen. An easy way to accomplish that is to use a stack navigator that is working by putting the new screens on top of the previous one, and will also display the back button and so on. To do that, it's super simple to accomplish with Expo router. We simply import the stack component from Expo router, and instead of rendering the slot, we are rendering the stack. Just like that, our screen got a header. When we go to the details page, we have a nice animation from the stack screen, and we can also go back from there. Just like that, we have a stack screen. If you want to adjust some properties of our stack screen, of our screens, you can do that with all the React navigation options. For example, screen options. You can do here what? Title, hello. This will change all the titles for all the screens to hello. You can change styles, header right, header back, like everything that is possible in React navigation. You can adjust here for screen options. Screen options is a way to change settings of all the screens in this tag. Now we have two screens, the home screen and the detail screen. So that's why changing title here, change it to both of the screens. If we want to change it only, I'm gonna remove it from here. If we want to change it only to one screen, we can do it in a couple of ways. One way would be to expand this tag from a self-closing tag to a normal opening a closing tag. And then inside the stack, we can go ahead and use the stack.screen. And here I'm going to use the name to target a specific screen. The name should be exactly the name of a file. So if I use index here, I can send to that specific screen some options like title, to do. Now this is to do, and the second one is details because that's the name of a screen. That's one way to do it. Another way would be to render this text screen directly inside the index file. So here, I'm going to expand this one. I'm gonna use it like this. So by rendering the stack screen inside the file of our screen, we no longer have to provide the name because it knows on which screen we are setting the options. So this is even easier because we go to the home screen and we see the options that we've got here. So project board, I don't know. Now the title is project board. Here is details. So I can take this one, go to the details, render it somewhere in the component, import the stack, and change from to task details. Task details, project board, task details. Perfect. Okay, going good. Now what I want to do is I want to change the style of our navigation to be dark mode. I don't know, I like dark mode. I think you also do. So let's see how we can accomplish that. In React Navigation that works with themes, providing themes to the navigator, here we can do the same. So let me double check where I have it. Well, I don't remember where, but let me think if I remember how to do it. So we're going to import something from React Navigation Native. Is it like this? I'm going to have to double check the it's with @ yeah, at reactnavigation.native. Here we're gonna import theme provider and also the dark theme. So if I'm going to wrap everything instead of this empty tag into a theme provider and then provide their theme, is it theme or value? Value equal dark theme. That will make the our headers with dark background properly styled, and even the page with black like this. Perfect. Also, like going around and doing like some kind of improvements here, what we can do, like if you look at the previous page, we see that, but no, I'm not gonna do it now. Maybe later, I'm gonna add it at the later. Yeah. I want you to do the blur blur header here to have a gradient go beyond the header. It's possible, but I don't want to spend a lot of time now. So maybe I'm gonna do it at the end. Anyway, so this is most of our navigation configuration that we're gonna need for now. What's missing from here is on the details page here in the text. Let's go ahead and do some style. I'm gonna do color white. So if I go here, details, yeah, the view will have style, padding, 10. Okay. This is going to be the name, so font size 20. First task. That's good. So yeah, on this task details, we need a way to know the ID or what task we are currently looking at. For that, we will need a dynamic path parameter. So a dynamic path parameter works like you might saw it on Twitter. So if you go to twitter.com/ and a username, for example, /Vadim notjust.dev, that will open my page, and the path parameter after /Vadim notjust.dev is going to be used as a variable to be used to fetch the data about that user. That's possible with Expo router, and that's how we enable possibility to send data as the path parameter. For that, instead of having like this detail screen, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to rename it to a dynamic property using the square brackets, and here I'm gonna name that variable path parameter. In our case, it's going to be the ID of the task. So by just putting this ID inside the task details, we can get access to this ID by taking it from use local search params hook from Expo router. Just like that, I'm getting the ID, so I can go ahead and say ID equal ID. So if I go here, let's reload. If I go here, we see ID details, and here ID details. Why? Well, that's because in the task list item, we are rendering to /details, and the word details becomes the ID here. At this moment, our tasks we do not have an actual ID. So later on, what we're gonna do is I'm going to add it as a template string, and I'm gonna navigate to / and then a variable that will take the task.id. So let me go in the task list. For the first items, I'm gonna provide an ID here, 1 or ID 1, 2, 3 as a string, and then ID like this. So now if I'm gonna press on the first task, we're gonna see ID 1, 2, 3. If I'm gonna press on the second one, ID 67. New tasks will not have ID for now, but later on we're gonna define them. So this way we can send the identifier of a task that we want to render, and later on we're gonna be able to query it and render the details, the information about the task here. Perfect. So that was the dynamic path parameters, and with that, our Expo router configuration for our application is more or less complete. So let me go ahead and do git add, git commit, Expo router. Perfect. Let me know if you have any questions so far. Our next step is going to be, we're getting into the interesting part of managing data, of setting up the Realm database locally on the device to set up the schema, and then go ahead, read, create, update, delete our tasks from the local database. After that is going to be complete, we're going to go ahead and connect it with the remote database so that everything synchronizes in the cloud. But before we do that, give me just 1 second to bring some water, and we are going to continue. So let me know any questions in the comment section, and I'm going to be back really soon. All right, I'm back. Let me open the window because I need some oxygen. And we are ready. Hello, Richard, watching from Zimbabwe. Hello. Richard is asking how, if it's possible or how to use Expo Realm while using Expo Go application. The short answer is that's not possible. So Expo Realm has some native code, and for that we need to build a custom development client, which basically means our own version of Expo Go. That's not complicated to do, and I'm gonna show you that how we can do in this video. So we're gonna cover that shortly. Bruno is asking, what are the strengths and weaknesses of Expo Router versus React Navigation? Expo Router is not reinventing like the actual navigation. Expo Router is built on top of React Navigation, so it only adds benefits on top of React Navigation. So everything that's possible with React Navigation, it's possible with Expo Router. The only difference is Expo Router handles the configuration and setting up the screens automatically for you. So you just create files and it creates the screen inside React Navigation stack, inside the React Navigation tree. So yeah. Okay, perfect. Okay. So at this moment, we have a pretty good user interface for our Trello clone. And the next step, as I was saying, was to start adding the Realm database to handle the data about our tasks. At the moment, we're using simply useState, and if I reload the application, we're gonna simply lose our items. By adding a Realm database, not only we're gonna be able to persist data, but we're also going to be able to query it in a very performant way, because Realm is going to have like a local database on your device so that we can run really powerful queries over it. So if your data can be huge and you're doing different operations of it, it's going to be much more performant compared to simply taking like let's say a store like a Redux store or a context data and simply writing it to async storage, for example. So yeah, this is not only like writing data, but it's an actual local database. So let's go ahead and I'm gonna close everything and we're gonna slowly start setting up, configuring it in our application. Let's go ahead to, and actually Realm is already called Atlas Device SDK. Realm was bought by Atlas. So if you go here, you see Realm is now Atlas Device SDK. Okay, so this is the local database that will also help us synchronize or authenticate users, and it has SDKs for different platforms. What we are interested in is in the React Native SDK. So let's open this up and let's go ahead in the installation guide. Well, to be honest, the way I'm gonna do it, like it's a bit different than strictly following the installation guide, because I really want this tutorial to help you integrate Realm in any kind of projects. Even if you have already started your project, the documentation is not going to be very helpful to you in that case, because it shows us how to use, for example, if we go to Bootstrap with Expo, it shows us how to start from scratch using a template. I don't want to do that because using a template, we lose the small details that we need to understand and to learn when configuring, when setting everything up. So that's why I didn't choose the template, and rather I want to set everything up ourselves and slowly explain like why we are doing everything. So for that, let's go into the install, and the install guide is meant for React Native CLI. So that's why we cannot kind of follow step by step any of the documentation, but we're gonna look through them and understand like what we have to do. So let's go and start up the process. So here it's the documentation from React Native, but this is for React Native CLI. So we're gonna look through it and see how we can do that in Expo. What we need to do is first install the Realm database in our project. So the name of the package is Realm. We can do it with npm install Realm, or we can do it with, let's do a clear here, or we can do it better with npx expo install Realm. And the next package that we have to install is realm/react. So let's install both of them at the same time. The npx expo install is the same npm install, but it adds a small step to check if the version is compatible with the current version of Expo. So for some packages that Expo said like, okay, this is tested and this works, it will choose that specific version that is compatible with Expo. So whenever possible, instead of npm install, I'm using npx expo install, which behind the scenes will actually do, as you can see here, npm install. So yeah, we see that it added 26 packages in 7 seconds. That's good. Let's go back. I'm gonna scroll up to see if we didn't skip anything. So the first step is enable Hermes. In our case, Hermes is by default enabled, so we don't have to do anything. CocoaPost dependencies, we don't have to manage it ourselves. Expo is doing that for us, so that's the benefit. For Android as well, Expo is handling that. Enabling TypeScript, we have that. We have TypeScript enabled. And then the 7th step is to install Realm React library, which will give us some hooks specific for React to interact with the Realm database. So there is the Realm database that lives on our device, and there is the Realm/React that allows us to connect to that local database. So these are two different concepts to keep in mind. Realm is the database, Realm React is the way to interact with that database. And then we have to run the application and then import the SDK. Okay, we can import the SDK. We are going to import it where? I'm going to create a new folder called providers, and let's create here realm.tsx. In this file, I'm going to configure everything related to Realm. So let's export default function Realm, or just simply Realm. And in the return statement, I'm gonna have some providers here that later we're gonna import, for example, from Realm like this. And in order to make sure that we can use it in our components and wrap around our screens, I'm going to receive here the children property, and I can type it here props with children, which is a helper type from React. So I can go ahead and render the children inside here. For now, this doesn't do a lot, but later on we're gonna do like Realm provider here so that the children that are the components that are rendered below or inside the Realm component, they are going to have access to the provider. That's going to be in a second, but let's make sure to connect this realm file, realm provider inside our app layout. Remember, as I was saying, the app layout is where we configure global stuff like a theme provider and so on. So that's going to be where we configure realm by importing it from providers. And I'm going to wrap it around our stack. If I'm gonna go back here, if this children property is confusing for you, what this children property means, this is a specific React property that will be assigned with the actual children of the component that is being rendered. So we are rendering realm here, we are sending there some children, and these children basically are a copy and paste here. And this way we can make sure that all the screens inside our application, inside our root stack, they will have access to everything configured in realm here. Okay. Realm has realm custom provider, because even like realm and realm provider will be, we will use it. So let's do it like this. So now everything is working, but in a moment, like we might already start getting errors. So let me actually continue the tutorial, and when we are going to encounter the error, I'm going to explain what we should do next. So let's go back to the documentation, and we're going to go to the quick start guide. The quick start will help us to get started with realm. So Realm React is a package used in React Native SDK. It provides state-aware hooks for Realm data. The hooks that we're going to use from here, they are going to watch the data and re-render whenever something happens. This way, our application will be really, will refresh and will feel very, I didn't think about a word for that, so it will feel very fast in a way, and everything is going to be up to date. Okay, so what we're gonna need an app provider, a user provider, that's for later. We're gonna now start simply with a Realm provider. Set up your Realm application. After installing this, there are two more things to set up before we can access your Realm and work with local data. We need to define our objects, we need to define our models that we want to handle in our Realm database, and we need to configure Realm by creating a context that will allow us to get access to the hooks. So I'm gonna skip for a moment defining the objects model. We're gonna cover that in a second. And I'm going to go right to the next one, configure Realm. So before we can work with data, we need to configure Realm. So to do that, we're gonna import Realm provider from Realm React like this. Let's do it at the top of our Realm file. And we're gonna use it here, Realm provider, to wrap our children, or in other words, to wrap the rest of the application inside the Realm provider, so that the rest of the application has access to this Realm provider. This Realm provider also needs a schema, and the schema is an array of models. I don't get the error yet, which I'm always waiting, like when will we get the error? So that means that we're gonna go ahead and define the object first, and hopefully then we're gonna get the error and we're gonna fix it. So let's go ahead and start defining the models. Everything in our application, the data that we're working with should be defined as a model, which has a specific structure that Realm is aware of. So we define the properties there, we define like which properties are required or not, their types, and this way Realm will know how to set the database, will know how to do the relationship between data and so on. At this moment in our application, let's think of a task as the only model that we have at this moment. So what we're going to have to do is in our source folder, let's create a new folder called models. And let's create a file called task.ts. Only TS because we are not rendering anything. We're not rendering GSX. So let's go ahead and define the realm object model, which should be defined as a class that extends a realm object. Should I do it this way and then show you? Yeah, let's just copy it from there. And this is a sample model. Where do you import Bison? I think it's import from a realm, Bison. And object schema, is it also from realm? Yeah, and realm also from realm? Yep. So here, later we're gonna come back here to update it. For now, let's just go with this example. We define a profile model that has the ID, which is required, and has a name. It also defines the schema with more information about the properties, like the ID should be an object ID, the name should be string, and it should also be indexed, and the primary key is ID. So with this information, we can import it in our realm providers. So let's import task from models / task export class. Should I do it like task? Just change it to task. Task name task. It's a name. Okay. So I changed everything from profile to task. Now it's a little bit better. And I can go to realm, import the task here, but I think I should destructure it. And I will send this task inside the schema as the first property. And here is where we get the error. It says that we are requiring an unknown module. If you're sure model exists, try restarting Metro. This is a hint that the code that we have is trying to access some native side code that is not available in our Expo Go application. So Expo Go comes with a set of native code. And sometimes when we install some libraries that have custom native code, or when we have to write our own custom native code, in that case, our application is no longer be able to run in Expo Go. That shouldn't scare you because that's very common and most of the applications will get to that point, and it's not very hard to continue from here. All we have to do is create a custom development build, which means that we will take the configuration of Expo and create the iOS and Android folders. To do that, you can do it in both ways. You can do it locally and you can do it in the cloud. I'm gonna start the build locally for iOS by stopping the server, clear, and by running npx expo run iOS. That's all it takes. This will start a build. The first time it will ask us for the bundle identifier. So let's just press enter. And as we can see, this build started generating the native side project, the iOS directory. For this to work, you need the Xcode configuration. You need Xcode on your machine to build for iOS. And it's only possible on a macOS device. To build it for Android, you need Android Studio setup with the Java and all of that things. And that is available on Windows, Linux, and macOS. if you are working on a Windows and you want to create a custom development build for iOS, that's not a problem, because you can also create these development builds in the cloud using EAS. Expo Application Services. You can create a development build with EAS, and for that you actually don't need anything set up locally like Xcode or Android Studio. So I'm gonna show you here Expo Custom Development Dev Build, and here is the documentation to create a development build. It shows us how to do it locally, and also it shows us how to do it with EAS. We just need to set development client true, distribution internal, run the build, and then download the file that will be built in the cloud. And then we are going to be able to use any kind of native code in our project. And what's actually happening is basically we are building our custom version of Expo Go, in which is built specifically for our application, for only the libraries that our application is using, including their native code. So yeah, this build will take a bit of time because it's a native build, and that's part of the iOS thing and Android as well. But we do it only once, and then we simply continue working, and everything is going to be very smooth. Hey Samuel, hello. I have an Zauhire is asking, I have an app with multiple screens that includes various requests, some of which are related to IDs or other parameters. Should I store all the data in Realm database or consider other options? It really depends on the size of your database, because if you are building, let's say, if you're building an application where you're going to have, I don't know, 20 categories and then 100 items, in that case, it's really simple to take your state and write it to local storage, and then when you open the application, you read everything as a string, you parse it to JSON, you load it in state, and that's a simple solution. But that is not going to perform very well if your items grow past thousands and tens of thousands of items. And also when you have to do like very custom filtering, searching, and so on. In that case, you'd have to load a lot of data in the memory of the phone. Your application is going to consume a lot of memory. And it's going to consume a lot of battery as well. So in that case, it's better to have a database that is stored locally, that you can send queries for specific data and only load in memory things that you need. So this really depends on how much data you're going to have to work with. What is Trello? Trello is a project management board, a very simple, like, where is it? Trello. Yeah, project management board that you can manage your projects. You can have multiple lists like to do, doing, done, review, and so on. Move cards around, assign people, and so on. So as we can see, our application finished building, and we have a new pop-up here, open in Trello. That means that if I press open, this will actually open a different application. So you can see here, the Expo Go is still running in the background, but now my application is running in a separate custom application called Trello, which is our application. And now our application with Realm, with custom native code, is working perfectly. And you can see it also on the screen, like it's a separate application. So that's all it took to create a custom development build. Running a command npx run iOS, assuming that you have Xcode configured, or npx expo run Android, assuming that you have Android Studio set up. And what that did is it created this iOS directory with the native side projects, with all the native code that our application depends on. Okay, perfect. So Moving on. Now we have a native build. Our application with our realm is working. Before I start writing tasks and reading tasks, I want to show you a little trick, a small package that can help us make the model configuration way easier. And the package that I'm going to show you is called Realm Babel plugin. So Realm Babel plugin, as you can see here, at the moment, we will always have to define our properties twice. One as a parameter of our class, for example, description is going to be here as string, and then we should make sure to go into the properties here in the schema, add description. So it's kind of like doing the work twice. What Realm Babel plugin is going to do is it's going to generate the schema automatically for us based on the object that we defined here. So let's go ahead and set it up because it's easy to set up, and then it's going to save us some time writing custom schemas. So let's go ahead and install Realm Babel plugin by copying this npm install command. At Realm Babel plugin. And there is also one more plugin proposal, decorators. I'm not sure if we're going to use it, but let's install it and forget about it. It's going to allow us to add some decorators to do some custom things. Maybe I'm going to show you a bit later. So having these two installed, we have to update our babel.config. Or let's follow actually step by step. In the TS config, we need experimental decorators to true in the compiler options. So TS config, compiler options, we need experimental decorators, true, okay. And then in our Babel config, we need to add these plugins. In Babel config, we have presets, let's add the plugins Realm Babel, and then these decorators. And now we're gonna need to reset it, to start the server with reset cache. And I can go ahead and from the task model, I will remove the schema altogether. I think, yeah, I remove a schema, but I need to keep some of the stuff. Let me double check what we need in the schema there. Let's take it from here, from the previous project, and work together and explain it. So this is the schema of our task. It's going to start with having an ID. We define the type here, and if we do equal sign and then a value, this is going to be the default value that is going to be used whenever we are not providing some. So this is a way to provide default values, and whenever we are creating a task, it's going to simply create a new object ID, which will be a unique ID for our task. Then we're going to have a description, which is required string. It's going to have isComplete as a boolean. It's going to have a created add timestamp, which will be initialized with a current date when we create an item. And instead of owner ID, let me actually change it to user ID, required string, and this is going to specify the ID of a user that created that task, because later on multiple users will be able to use the application, so we need to know which task this belongs to. And finally, we need this static primary key to define which of these fields is the primary key. So we are using the ID as the primary key. And because we have installed that Babel plugin, the schema is going to be automatically generated based on all of these fields that we defined here. So let's go ahead and where our project is running, we see that invalid schema for object task. That's because we need to restart our server. Let's stop it and let's run it with npm start -- clear. I'm gonna start it. And by default, our npm start will start using Expo Go. So we can simply press S to switch to development build. So if I press S, it's gonna reload and show here development build. And now I can go ahead and run I, and it will open on iOS. Hopefully with the Babel config set up so that our task schema is defined automatically. Oh, migration is required due to the following errors. Property task name. We did some changes on this task, and now it thinks that we need to provide a migration. For development, so what happened? We had different schema. It configured the database. Now we change that schema, and if you would have some items there, it can break the database. So we need to provide a migration that specify how should we change the previous data in the database to fulfill the new schema that you provided. That's a very important topic when you're building a production application, because you don't want to break previous schema. But for now, because we are still in development, I think it would be safe if we provide a configuration. Let me double check, where was it? Atlas, device SDK, remove if migration needed. There is a property like to simply remove the previous database and start from scratch if there is any. No, where is it? Their documentation is a bit hard to follow because it beats a lot, but yeah, let me check. React to changes? No. Realm files. Configure a realm. Change an object model, modify schema properties. Okay, we need a migration for that, but we can bypass migration during development. When developing or debugging your application, you may prefer to delete the realm instead of migrating it. So we need to use delete realm if migration needed property to delete the database automatically when a schema mismatch requires a migration. Never release an app to production with this property set to true. But for now, we are in development, so we are going to use it. And let's go to the base configuration. How do we configure it? That's an interesting topic. Realm config. Pass the configuration object with dated schema. This should be here somewhere in the config. How do we pass the configuration? Basically, at the moment, an easier option would simply be to delete the application. That would probably delete the database as well and run it again. And later we're gonna check no development build. Yeah, because we need to run it there. So I'm going to do npm expo run iOS. The second, hopefully it's going to take a bit less. But this is realm provider, but where is the realm configuration? Configure a realm. Yes, it's for realm provider. Add other configuration object properties as realm provider to configure. Create a realm context. Okay, I think I know. Okay, yeah, I think I know, but let's see. Let's continue this way, just not to confuse, because for that we need to create a different provider. While we're here waiting, but no, let's wait. Let's be patient. Not to break anything for now. So now it opens. The database should be empty, so it should take this schema and configure it. Yes, it did. So now everything is working perfectly. So far, what we have done is we have installed Realm and Realm React. We have created the provider. And now all our screens have access to this provider. The provider is working based on the schema composed only of the task model. We define the task model in a separate file as the extension of Realm object. And using the Babel config, we automatically generate the schema based on the properties. So now it's much easier to manage it like this. So we don't need object schema anymore. Okay, good. So the next step is going to be to start already creating stuff and interacting with our Realm database. The first step would be probably to create a new Realm, a new item to write something in the database, because if we read something, it's going to be empty. So let's go ahead in the documentation. I'm gonna close most of this stuff. And in the quick start, after defining the Realm object, configuring it, we should go ahead and start working with Realm objects. To interact with them, we can get access to the Realm itself using the hook useRealm. This is going to help us write things. useQuery is helping us query data, and useObject is helping us query one single object knowing its ID. So let's go ahead and start by... I'm not going to query first because it's going to be empty. So let me try to first write. Writing should be here, create object. To create a new Realm object, we need to specify the object type and pass the initial values and add it into a write transaction block. So first we need, yes, Realm write, Realm create, profile. Okay. Let's go ahead and go to our components task list, because that's where we have a create task hook here. So what we need to do is, instead of setting it in state like this, we need to write it to Realm database. First of all, we need access to the Realm database using Realm equal use Realm. That I don't know why it's not suggesting me the import, but it should come from @Realm React. So using this hook, we get access to the Realm, and using Realm, we can start. First of all, we're going to start a write transaction. I'm gonna tell you in a second what does a transaction mean, but the second one is going to be a realm.create, and we want to create here an object. We need to specify the type of that object, so that is going to be our task that we will import from models. So at the top, task imported from models, and this is the task that we want to create. And the information that we want to send, the ID is auto-generated, description is important, so that's going to be the second parameter here. Description is going to be new task, which is the field that we keep track of what user is writing. And what else? Is complete will initialize with false, created at will initialize with a current date, and user ID is another required property that we will need to specify here. Because if we don't have it, I'm gonna try to add, and we see missing value user ID. So we need user ID when creating a new task. And the user ID initially, let's say at 123. Now, if I'm gonna go ahead and do new task, add task, something happened. We didn't get any errors, and hopefully we managed to actually write a new task to the database. The only way to know that, I'm gonna remove this one. The only way to know that is to go ahead and query the database and get the list of tasks. To query the database, we're going to use another hook called, imported from Realm React, called use query. So const tasks equal use query. And here we need to specify the type that we want to query. So it's going to be our task. I don't think we need to filter anything, so we're gonna, for now, take all of them, and I will rename it to tasks. And I will also comment out the state, because we no longer need the state, and right away we see the task actually displayed there. So if I'm gonna do a second task and do add, it's going to add here instantly in our database. And that also means that if I'm gonna go ahead and close the application altogether and open it again, the data is persisted because the data is written to a local Realm database. And yes, that's how easy it was to create and read and query our Realm database. It took a little bit of time to configure it, I agree, but then after that is done, like, it's really simple to interact with it. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove this state altogether. And speaking about this Realm write, this is starting a Realm transaction. I'm not sure if it will work without a transaction at all. Maybe it will. Without transaction. Add. No. Everything, all the modifications like update, read, delete, they should happen inside realm.write, which is a transaction. What does it mean? That means that if I'm trying here to write two things, but one of them is broken, let's say either add both or none. If I would add a transaction, we see that we have an error with a second create, but the first one is going to be reverted back. So if I check back, we see that it was not added there. That's because this is inside a transaction. The write is a transaction, and a transaction means that either all the operation here complete successfully or none of them will be saved. This is great like when you are doing let's say a transaction is very important, when a very good example would be handling the transaction of money between two accounts. If you are sending the money from one account and doing like subtract $1,000 from account A, everything works successfully, and then add $1,000 to account B and it fails. And if you keep it that way, that means that you have an imbalance. You subtracted the money from account A, but you didn't add it anywhere. So you don't want things like this to happen. You want either both of them to happen or none of them to happen. So that's what the transaction actually means. So that's very powerful. So that's why we have it here. Now I will have it like this. So everything works. Let's go. Oh my God. Okay, so we have a lot of items already. Let's see how we can delete an item. Let's see how we can delete an item. Deleting an item is going to happen from the task list item because there we are sending this task as an item. So let's go to the task list item. We are lucky because we use this description, so that's why everything works out of the box. But it would be great if we actually say that this task, now we know that the type of this property task is the task, not from React Native, but from our models. Import task from models. So yeah, we can access it with IntelliSense like .description or created at and so on. We see that we don't have an underscore ID, so it's going to fail undefined. And TypeScript is telling us that because in our case it's underscore ID, it's not simply ID. If we look at the task object underscore ID, and this is something very common to MongoDB to have it underscore ID. Anyway, here we have a task, and when we press on this icon, we want to delete it. So let's add here a function const delete task equal delete task equal to, I'm gonna start with a console warn delete, and I'm gonna assign here on press delete task. What? Oh, I forgot here and hey, come on, work. Yes, here it is. So if I press on one of these icons, we see delete. So in order to delete a task, again, we need access to realm. So const realm equal use realm. This use realm is going to be imported from at realm/react. In the delete, all operations should be inside the realm.write inside a transaction, and here it's the function of a transaction. And what we have to do is let's check the documentation because I forgot. It should be a realm delete or something like that. This is for updating objects, and where is it? Deleting objects is realm.delete and the object that we want to delete. So simply realm.delete, and here we provide the task that is of a type task that we want to delete. Just like that, if I start deleting things, we are actually deleting them, as you can imagine. Oh, come on. I missed the button. Perfect. So let's go ahead and also probably handle one more thing. We saw how we can fetch or query the database for a list of things using the use query. But how can we fetch only one item? To do that, we're gonna handle it on the application on the detail screen here in the id.tsx. We know the ID, and the only thing is that we need to get the task object based on that ID. We're gonna use here a use object hook from at realm react, and let's go ahead and do task equal use object. The type of the object is going to be task imported from models, and the ID is going to be ID like this. It might not work, but we're gonna figure it out. So if task is not defined, if task is null, that means that it couldn't find it. So let's return here a text saying not found. Otherwise, I'm gonna say here, instead of ID, I'm going to say task dot description, which doesn't say, like, it doesn't provide me IntelliSense. That's because we need to type this use object hook using task like this, which is a bit weird because it already knows the task, so I would expect it to work automatically, but we need to provide the type here if we want IntelliSense like this description. So if I press new task, the error is that it expected this ID to be of type object ID, but we send there a string. So that means that our task, the ID is of type bson object ID. So we need to transform from a string to an object ID. So for that, we're going to need this bson imported from realm, and we're going to do new bson.object ID, and there we're going to put the ID of an item. Now, if I go to new task, we see the name. If I go to this one, we see the name. If I add a new one and go here, we right away see the name. Perfect. So that's how we can query task based on an ID. And this problem is that this ID can be string or an array of strings. So I don't know, I'll just do it as string, just as a shortcut, not to worry about it. So now we saw how we can query one single object knowing its ID. Perfect. Let's go ahead and do a git status, git add. Right after I set git status, I see that we have an untracked folder called iOS. If I'm gonna go ahead and do a git add right now, that would add the iOS directory in our Git repository. There is a concept that Expo introduced called Continuous Native Generation Expo. And what that means, like you can read more about that, but what that means is instead of adding the iOS and Android folders to our Git repository, it would be better if we create them every time we need them. This way, everything is configured through the properties here, so we never touch directly the iOS and Android folders. So to kind of follow the pattern of CNG, we're gonna go ahead and add in our git ignore, we're gonna add the iOS folder. So now if I'm gonna do git status, we no longer are tracking the iOS directory because we can always generate it using npm run iOS or even npm pre-build that will generate these folders. So let me go ahead and follow git add, git commit -m, set up realm as a local database. Perfect. So far, so good. Hello, Inamul. Hello, Shady. Hello, So. Okay, so we're going good so far. Let me delete this one. Nice. What we didn't see is updating an object, right? So I think updating an object would happen on the details page. So let's see how that would happen. If I go to application details page here, ID, we are rendering the description as a text. If I simply change this one to a text input, we're going to be able to right away edit it there and update the information about that component. So let's render it as a text input, where and for the text input we need some value there. So we're gonna have to keep track in a state variable of the updated value. So updated description set updated description equal use state. And we're gonna default it with what? I don't know with what, probably with empty string right now, but or should we, can we default it with task question mark dot description? Is it going to be synchronous? I think so. Are we gonna have access to it? Maybe, we're gonna see. So let's use this updated description as the value of our text input. We no longer need to render it as the child. So I'm gonna delete it, and actually I'm gonna leave a closing tag and make this a self-closing text input tag. Style color, okay. What's happening? I don't know yet. But on change text, we want to do set updated description. So if I go here, yeah, probably initially the task description is not available. It's going to be available a bit later. So what I can do is I will initialize it with empty string. And what's going on here? Property does not exist on type string. Oh, wait a second. I was destructuring from an object, but I should destructure from an array. My bad. Yeah, so now if I go new task, it's right away editable. And if I I'm thinking how to actually handle the save, like when to save. There is a callback on end editing, and if I do here console warn end, that will be called when that component loses like kinda focus. For example, pressing enter will call this function. But will it also call it when we go back? Yes, it also calls it when we go back. So I think that's a very good place where we can update in the database our description, because we know that we are end editing, so we can update in the database. So let's go ahead and do update description. And let's define it as a function here, const update description. And what do we need for that? Of course, we're gonna need a realm from realm React. Use realm. Const, maybe I'm gonna do it here. Const realm use realm. In the update description, we're gonna do, first of all, we're gonna check if we have a task, because if we don't have a task, we don't have what to update. So I'm going to return right away. But if we have a task, we can go ahead and do a realm.write, because this is how we change stuff in the database. And then realm dot, should it be update or change, or I don't know. Let's check it out in the documentation. Where is it? Here. Working. Create update, create, updating. Realm. Here, write. Oh, we're just simply updating that field, and that's it. So it's going to be simply task.description is equal to updated description. If that works, like that's really updated, like this one, the state variable. So if I go to new task 1, 2, 3, and then go back, look at this. It automatically updates, and by the time we are back here, like we can do normal text, go back, and it's already here. So that's really, really fast, like instant. Cool, that's really nice. So that was updating. Very easy to do, even easier than creating and deleting. It should be array. Yes, thank you very much. That was for the structuring here of a state. Yep. So let's go ahead and do git add, git commit -m, update task. Nice. So that's it. So far, our application is working perfectly with a local realm database. This application doesn't need any kind of internet connectivity. It doesn't have anything. It doesn't need anything else. We install it on our application and we can use it however we want, whenever we want. That's perfect. In the next step, so far we saw how to add things, how to delete things, how we can update things and they instantly become updated. And yeah, in the next step is going to be when we go ahead and synchronize it with the cloud, so that if you want, for example, to work on the same project from different devices, or yeah, like on your phone and the tablet, you want to synchronize all of these things together. So that's why we need to synchronize it in cloud. Or, for example, if you delete the application, at the moment you're gonna lose all the data, because deleting the application also deletes the local database. But having a backup of your database, synchronizing the cloud, and that would allow you to always come back to your application, sign in with your account and get the previous data that you had and continue working with a local first application. That is going to be the next step. The next step, synchronizing it with a cloud. Any questions so far? Why is my status bar not light? Do you think it's because of a theme provider? So if I do it outside, like this, and put it into, yeah, now it works. Okay. Okay, guys, so the next step, as I was saying, is to go ahead and synchronize our Realm database with a cloud. To do that with Atlas services, that's, I wouldn't say easy, but it's possible. It involves a lot of configuration, but I'm gonna again try to explain it step by step and even like add a bit of context around the documentation that might be a bit confusing. So if we look in the documentation where we saw about modeling data, CRUD operation, Atlas app services, yes. So the next step is going to cover Atlas app services. So Realm provides SDK that help you connect your client application to the Atlas app services backend. The SDK provides functionality needed to authenticate users. So we're gonna also build the authentication, but we're gonna try to keep everything possible to get started as an unauthenticated user. So we're gonna have anonymous authentication first and then email-based authentication. We're gonna cover that as well. And these Atlas App Services will also allow us to directly access the MongoDB data source. Or in our case, we're gonna use MongoDB data source as a way to synchronize or replicate local data. Authentication and user management. Okay, calling Atlas file, accessing MongoDB. Okay, let's go ahead in the first one, connect to Atlas App Services. So the first thing is going to be to create an App Services application. So let me check also the documentation if it's any helpful. We can create the App Services application from App Services UI. We're gonna use the UI. And this is a managed backend instance that contains your application services. So to create the project, we need to go to MongoDB Atlas. If you don't have a documentation in front of you, just simply go MongoDB Atlas in Google, and the first link should be a link to the MongoDB website. From here, you can go ahead and sign in. And I'm gonna sign in with, I don't remember how, but let's see. Yeah, I'm gonna sign in with my GitHub account. And after that is done, we should see, if we press on the Atlas here, you should see a list of projects. Let's go ahead and create a new project by pressing new project here. And let's name the project Trello. Let's click next. My user as a project owner, and let's do create project. That's it. Now I think we need to go to the next step, and we need to go to App Services. So let's go ahead to the App Services. And I need to choose the organization. Yeah, I'm gonna go into this. Oh. So let's go to Trello and then to App Services. Come on, should give me access. Let's go to choose this notjust.dev, Trello, come on, App Services. There are some kind of things like this that. So going to the project. App Services. To gain access, ask the organization owner to add your IP address to in the Atlas UI. So where is that happening? Let me not share the screen for a second just to find where I can add my IP address. It should be there, to be honest. I'm not sure why it's not. It's just so many things. Come on. Access manager or where? Invite, create team, no. Settings. That's driving me a bit nuts. Hey Bruno, thank you very much for that donation. Bruno is saying, dude, it's awesome to have you here live and answering people's questions. Thank you. Hope you keep here for a long time. All the best. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. It makes dealing with these issues much easier. Of course, let's Google it. Maybe there is some limitation on how many app services I can have enabled. Let me simply try to sign out and sign back in. Log out. You have security menu on the left, network access. 1 second. I'm going to double check that. Well, signing out and signing back in fix the problem. Oh no, it redirected me back. So what do I have? I have security menu on the left. Where? Settings, alerts, organizations. Maybe inside the... It shouldn't be inside the project. It should be here. Okay, here. Access list by key docs. Get started with Atlas administration, grant programmatic access, require or... Well, the easiest way probably is going to be to disable this for a second. And later on, I'm going to enable it back. So if I go now to Trello, and now if I go to app services, fingers crossed, I still don't have access. It's crazy. Require for Atlas Administrator API. But that's for the API. Oh, looking to manage access to projects? Yes. Let me check. No, it's the same. Back to project page. Let's go. You have security. I have security and I have network access. Okay. So, okay. Current IP address not added. Okay, I'm gonna add my IP from here. And we are deploying. Yes, status. I'm waiting for the status to become active. And now if I go here, still not working. Maybe it needs a bit of time. Network access. The IP address is still like, it says inactive. So does it take time for it to become active? We had like some other issues like this, like to go through the configuration, like if you're not used to the Atlas dashboard, like it can be a bit hard. Advanced. Atlas UI. Your IP address to IP access list for Atlas UI. Access manager. 1 second. Let me try again this one. Why? Can it be because I'm on a free, and is there any limit on how many app services I can have enabled? Because I have it on another test account. So app services, maybe it's only available on one project, because I didn't have any issues with this in the test to do here. So if I look at the app services here, everything is working. So let's try to delete the application. I remember some in the past, some limitations of being able to do only a couple of things for the free account that I have. So let me try to choose here Trello. Still, that's nice. Permission to view Atlas UI. It works on the free account. For you, it worked, right? For the Atlas. Just going around like with this. services. Hmm. Hello, Ibrahim. Atlas security missing IP address. Let me try to delete the project. Let me try from scratch. I don't know if that's going to change anything. It doesn't even allow me to delete the project or what. Nice. Atlas status. Maybe they're having some issues. MongoDB. Everything is operational. Trello board. Next. Yes, create project. From here, I should go to app services and it should work, but it's not. Let me try to create a deployment first, even though you don't have to do it. Maybe that's gonna change anything. So let's select M0 for the free version. The cluster 0 is already chosen. Cluster 1, okay. We don't need a sample data set. And let's create deployment. Okay, that's going to create a database user. It will add my IP address to the whitelist. And let's go next. Close. Then let's try app services. The same problem. Exactly how I feel right now. resolve itself after a couple of hours. Support said it seemed like a caching or other browser related issue and to try clearing the cache or using a different browser next time. That's weird. Let's go ahead and start in a incognito tab. If that's the problem, I'm gonna be where is it? Oh boy. Okay, so we are on Trello board in an incognito window. Fingers crossed, app services. Same. That's fun. Should I go ahead and try it with a previous database that I have set, to which I seem to have access? Let's do it that way. Yeah, because there is no other way. Yes, so indeed, I'm gonna use the previous application on which I have app services enabled, and I really hope that you are not encountering the same issues. I don't know, some configuration issues, some IP addresses, no idea what's happening. But here, if I go to a previous project that I have here set up, the test to do. If I go to app services, we can start from scratch. I deleted the previous app services, so now we can create the app services together. So what I'm gonna do is, you can try to go with a template from here, but I will go ahead and do it together. So let's press build your own application. Let's choose this one. Let's do next. Link your data source. So this one, it can link to the data source, which if in your project you don't yet have a data source, and the data source is going to be the actual MongoDB database that is being used, it will automatically create a free tier cluster. So in your case, it's going to be this one. In my case, I already have this Atlas cluster, so it's connecting to the Atlas cluster that I created previously. So let's press save, name your application. Let's name it, I don't know, Trello, save. And for the app deployment, I'm gonna use single region Frankfurt. Okay, so let's go ahead and do create app service. Let's close the guides. Maybe we're gonna open them later. So yes. Now, as I said, if you didn't have a cluster yet, that should have initialized a new cluster, and to see it, you can go to data services, and the data services is where you can look at the actual database. So here under the database, you should see probably not instantly, but in a bit of time, you should see the Atlas cluster. So you can go there, and that's where you're gonna see like the collections and the tables that the database has. At the moment, I have it. This is from the previous one, so I'm gonna delete it. Let's drop it. So at the moment, we don't have any database and any collections, but that's okay. We need to go back to our app services, and we need to configure a bit more things to start connecting our local Realm database with app services here. So let's go to the Trello. And what would be the next step? Let's check the documentation. In the documentation, we are at choose an application type. I started from the blank. Application name, link data source. So again, this was the data source that was created. The region and the application environment that determine which environment values to use to learn more. Okay, create application. Get application metadata. Well, before we get the application metadata, I think I'm going to go ahead and press on this no environment because I want to set up an environment. I want to set up the development environment. Let's save draft. And you can also do next, got it. And let's do review draft and deploy. Deploy. So now we switch to development environment. I'm not really sure if that's what I wanted to do. So let me check under the apps, Trello. Yes, it's in development. And I want to go to the manage app settings. In the app settings, no, where is it? Device sync. Yes. Is it going to show in the documentation? So much information here. But I'm gonna go back to the previous documentation that is specifically around the React Native SDK. So the first step, we created the application. We need to get our application. Just trying to think like the step-by-step process that we have to do, because right now in the documentation it says like we already need to get the application ID. So let's follow that, and if we're gonna have some issues, we're gonna come back here because we still have to do some changes here. And I know them, but let's see. Maybe it's not time. So what we need now is the ID of our application. So if I'm gonna press on the name of our application, being inside app services, we have application ID. Let's copy this application ID and let's go in our providers in our Realm. Here in Realm, this is our local database. Now we're going to go ahead and import the app provider from Realm React. So I will import it right away here. The app provider is how we set up the connection from our application to the cloud app application that we define here in Atlas App Services. So let's go ahead and render the app provider. Inside the app provider, we're going to have the realm provider, and inside the realm provider, we're going to have simply the children like this. But the app provider will also need the application, and the application should have the ID of application. So we can have here at the top const app ID equal, and let's render it app ID. It's not like that. It should be ID, not application. ID, app ID. So let's go ahead and copy the ID of our application from the dashboard and paste it here. Let's go ahead and open back the application. It crashed for some reason. Let's see the logs, if we have any. Reload. Okay, everything is working fine so far. What are the next steps? Well, the next steps is actually the user provider. The user provider is going to allow us to authenticate and handle information about the user who is currently logged in. There are ways to have anonymous users, but anyway, we need some kind of a user to be able to link the data with a specific user, because an application is being used by a lot of users and all of them are creating data, so we need information about who is creating this data. So let's go ahead and add this user provider. And this I know for sure. Before we actually do anything, let's go ahead on our application, and under data access authentication, being inside app services, we should go ahead and first of all allow users to log in anonymously. So let's click that. Allow users to sign with. If I press on this one, it redirects here. Let's do save draft. Go back to authentication. This one is enabled, anonymous. And let's do also enable the one for email and password. Let's select it. For email and password, user confirmation method, let's do automatically confirm users. For development in production, you can send a confirmation email. Reset password. Let's do, I don't know, I'm gonna redirect simply to Google for now because I don't really want to go into a lot of details with reset passwords, but this is going to be the URL that you want to send when trying to reset the password. Let's save draft. And I think if we go back to authentication providers, that's what we want now. Anonymous and email. Let's see under user settings. No, we don't need to do anything. But we need some things to be changed on the whole application settings. So if I'm going to go to manage app settings, no, that's going to come a bit later. So anyway, after doing the changes, we're going to see here review and deploy. So after doing some changes, we can go ahead, check the updates and press deploy. These are deploying the changes. Was successful. So now we would allow authentication with anonymous and also with email and password. Whew, let's go back. So user provider. User provider should be rendered inside our application provider. User provider. And if we provide here a fallback component, const anonymous login. I'm gonna define this component that will simply say text login as guest. Let me import. What happened here? Import text from React Native. Now if I'm gonna pass anonymous login as the fallback of our user provider, what's gonna happen is if there is no user authenticated, it's going to render the fallback. So that's where we have anonymous login. Or maybe let's go ahead and actually create it as a component. Let's call it new file login.tsx. Let's move the anonymous login to our login component. Let's do export default. And actually, I will call it like login, just login. Because for now it's going to be login as a guest, but later on we're gonna have like more types of login. So text from React Native. And let's also import view so that we can align everything in the center. Maybe instead of text, should it be a button? Continue as a guest. Let's go style. Flex 1 and using align items center and justify content center. We're gonna make sure that the continue as a guest is rendered in the middle of a screen. So let's go ahead and import this login component in our realm provider. Import login from components login, and let's render it as a fallback of our user provider. Okay, we see continue as a guest. If I press, nothing happens, but let's go ahead and see how we can sign in as a guest inside our login screen. So here on press, guest login. Let's add this function here, const guest login. And here we need to actually authenticate the user as a guest. To do that, if I remember correctly, we're gonna have the use of hook from realm React and const equal use of. Think there should be a property login with anonymous. So if I simply call this login with anonymous in guest login, if I press this button, I'm right away back in my application, because realm in this user provider will render the login only when there is no user. When there is a user, it's going to render the children. So the children is our screen. And now if I reload the application, it's going to remember that I am logged in. That means that now inside, for example, our components task list, we can get access to the user using the same use from user hook. We can do const user equal use user. So what that will do is console log user. Let's see what's the information about the user. So if I do reload, it has information about the application. It has, should have an ID, no? Let me try to json.stringify user null and 2. So this doesn't look like a user, to be honest. Manage users. So you can do Facebook, Apple, Google, use user, and then WhatsApp we've had the user. Let me try to simply do console log user.id. Console log user.id. So right away we see the ID of a user, of the guest user that was created for us. If we go to our Atlas dashboard, here we can go to app users, and we will already see a user with an unknown name with this ID that I just console logged in the application. And the provider is anonymous login. The thing is that the data of an anonymous user is going to be stored only for a limited amount of time, and after I think 30 days or something like that is going to be deleted. So that doesn't mean that the local data is going to be deleted, but the cloud data. So later on in the video, we're going to see how we can sign in with actual email and password, so that the user can like create an account and log in from different devices. For now, what I'm going to use this use user in our task list is when creating a task, instead of hard coding this user, I'm going to do user.id. Okay. We're gonna need it later, but make sure to do user.id here in the task list. This way we are assigning it to a specific user. Oh, that's a rough start of Realm, I must say. Like, the configuration issues gave me a lot of headache, but I'm happy that now we got started, so we can continue with our plan. So let's do git commit -m setup app provider and anonymous sign in. Git add. Okay. And by the way, I'm now thinking like about this process of seeing a text continue as a guest. In a lot of cases, that's okay, because you might want to show like a login screen and with a button continue as a guest. But if you want to right away, like when you open the application, to go to this screen without having the user to press on anything, simply console log this guest login here. So whenever the component will mount, it's going to perform a guest login and it will right away redirect there, and you might not even need to render anything. So this would automatically log in the user as soon as you open the application without him having to press on anything. I'm gonna keep it like this because later on maybe we're gonna have like a proper login screen here. But now let's continue. And what I want to continue with, as I said, is I want to synchronize the database, the local database in the cloud. So that's my next step. We need to enable synchronization. Let me check if the documentation is of any help today, or we're gonna have to go YOLO. So Atlas App Services connect. Okay, we connected. Retrieve. Okay, we don't need that. Encrypt. No need. Call a function. Query MongoDB. No. Manage users. No. Let's go to the sync data. Atlas Device Sync automatically synchronizes data between client application and Atlas App Services backend, the backend that we created here in App Services. Perfect, that's what we want. When a client device is online, Sync asynchronously synchronizes data in the background between the device and your backend application. And that's what powers and makes this both an online and offline application, which is offline first, and only after the offline is happening, the data behind the scenes in background is being synchronized with the cloud. So for that, we're going to use a flexible sync. When you select a flexible sync for your backend application configuration, your client implementation must include subscriptions to query the fields. Flexible syncs works by synchronizes data that matches query subscriptions you maintain in the client application. So from the application, we're going to subscribe to data, and that's how we're going to keep things in sync, because maybe not everything we want to synchronize. That's also possible. So let's go ahead and configure a synced realm. You can configure a realm to automatically synchronize, okay, between many devices that each have their own local copy of data. We need to enable flexible sync on the backend. So let's do that. I'm gonna go to our app services, and here let's go ahead under. Is it going to be Atlas Device SDK? No, it's going to be Device Sync. Under Device Sync, let's go ahead and press Start Syncing. Generate schema. We actually have a schema, so no thanks, continue to sync. We're gonna go to the configuration of a device sync. We're gonna choose flexible here. For now, let's select development mode. And the cluster is that MongoDB where we want to use or where we want to write the data in the cloud. Okay, define a database name. Let's select or add a database. We don't have any database yet, so let's call it Trello. Let's create. And selecting the queryable fields, we need to make sure that we're going to come back here to select them. That's a very important thing, and I spent like hours figuring it out. But now, think everything is done. We can press Enable Sync. Write a copy of all our data that matches the JSON schema in your... Okay. Check your cluster storage before proceeding, before Enable Sync. Okay, Enable Sync. Okay, what's there? Add the default role for a preset. Default user is denied all access. User can read all data. Users can read and write all data. Let's select users can read and write all data by default, and then we're gonna see how we can adjust that. Add default role. What else? Are we done here? Probably yes. So let's press review, draft, and deploy. And let's deploy our changes that enables device synchronization. And it's very important to have development mode on and flexible sync type. Going back here, authenticate the user. So to configure a sync realm, we need to import providers, configure application provider. We have done that in the realm. We have app provider, all good. User provider, all good. And then we need to configure realm provider to enable the sync on it. So realm provider is the provider for our realm local database. That's where we will also say like, hey, you also need to synchronize with the remote one. It should be inside the user provider, which we already have. And we also must set up a subscription in order to start the synchronization. The example below uses an initial subscription, but you can also start. Okay, this is how you nest providers. So in the realm provider, we need the synchronization configuration. I'm gonna copy this sync from here, and I'm gonna add it for our realm provider after providing the schema. So the sync configuration has flexible true, and we also provide here some initial subscriptions, like subscribe to some initial data, update, subs, and here is where we will set up subscription to the tasks. So we need to import task from our import task from models task. Should we destructure it? Oh, we already imported it. So now realm object task, that should start a subscription with the tasks. Let's try to reload the application, see what's going on there. And right away, everything disappeared for us. Let's try to add some information, add task. Cannot write a class task when no flexible sync subscription has been created. But we have flexible sync here. Why are not working? Let's go ahead and do what? Open Trello again. Error, query metadata sync. Let's double check with my example to make sure that flexible. I have on error here. You can provide the on error for the sync to console log the error itself. Perform input operation requires a valid session ID. A valid session ID. In my case, the application ID looks a little bit different than here. So I'm wondering, but it connected, like I created, let's double check. Let's go ahead here, reload our app services. See what's going on. So if I go to my Trello, this is the application ID. Application ID. Yeah. Then we have a schema, and the schema was uploaded from our locally defined schema. So we know that something worked correctly. It took the schema that we defined locally in our local database using model, using all of this information, and it uploaded it to our app services. So something is working. Sync models. Schema authentication. App users. Schema. Device sync. Development mode is enabled. That's good. Permissions are completely open for application. Okay, that's also good. Sync session. Log sync models. no, configuration. It's okay that we have development mode, we need that. Yeah, not sure why it fails to synchronize. Okay, let me check again. There's realm objects. Realm objects, I think this one should be added as a string. And it also has a rerun on open true. Okay, something worked. We wrote something. It's here. And now if I'm gonna go to app services, if I'm gonna go to data services to check out the actual database, let's open database here. Let's go to Atlas cluster collections. And here we should see the task collection under the Trello database. And right away, we should see the objects that we just created. If I go back here and remove one of them, they should probably be removed from here as well, or at least, yes, it was removed completely. And yes, that's nice. That's how the information synchronizes in the cloud automatically behind the scenes without us having to do a lot of stuff. The only difficult part, of course, is the configuration and getting it to work. But after that, we don't have to do anything extra. Like the same way as our application was working offline, now it's also working online as well. And in a moment, we're gonna see this by logging into the same account, trying to properly trying to work with the same data, update it on one device, see it updated on a different device. Okay, that's good. So that means that we have syncing enabled, right? Okay, let's go ahead and do the following: git add, git commit -m, setup cloud sync with Atlas app service. Hello from Turkey. Hello, hello. Can you self-host the whole stack, or you need to pay a monthly plan to MongoDB? That's a very good question. I have no idea if you can self-host it, but I believe you cannot. I don't think like the app services. MongoDB, yes, you can self-host MongoDB. But the app services stuff, I'm not sure. Good question. Oh, so we have a schema. Okay, let's go ahead and now set up email-based authentication, email and password. Because it's good to have like guest login, but if I want to run this application on a different device, or maybe let's actually do this first. Let's run it on a different device by doing npm npx expo run Android, and see how we can have different data, then filter the different data, and only then do that one. Yes, that's how we're gonna do it next. I don't know. Yes, you can do that. So I'm running on Android. I'm building for Android. And that means that, yeah, I'll try to use like 2 phones to do that. Should I wait and do it like step by step? Hopefully it's not gonna take like crazy amount of time. Meanwhile, I can prepare the next thing. I can go to Expo icons. Let's go here and let's find the user icon. I don't know, something like this. And let's render it as part of the header on the project board. So for example, I'm gonna go to the application, layout, under the screen options here, of the stack, let's do header, right? It's going to say, it's going to be a component that will render this icon. I will import it from Font Awesome and I'm gonna render it like this. It should be gray, or maybe light gray. 20 maybe, or yeah, 22. 24 is okay. And whenever we press on this item, we're gonna have to go to a profile page or to the actual login page. But I'm gonna follow that in a moment. Let's see what's going on with Android. Enable Android. Why is that? What's up with this Android phone? Why it's not running? What's the okay. So here we have a continue as a guest. I'm thinking that I don't need the continue as a guest at all. The login, I think at the end of the day, I'm gonna call it anonymous login. I'm gonna call this component anonymous login, and in the providers in Realm for the fallback, I'm gonna do anonymous login like this. Now it still renders continue as a guest text, but as I was explaining to you, let me show you how to do that. So instead of doing this, what I can do is I can call login with anonymous. I can delete this one, or instead simply return null. I don't need it anymore. So this is a component that right away when being rendered will try to log in as a guest. That's what it does, and we are right away here. So we have access to the same information. If I write something on the iOS send, it automatically adds here. If I write something here on Android, which is a bit slow, it adds there automatically. If I delete, as you can see, things are updated and deleted instantly. Updated, save, update. Perfect. So we see how the synchronization works between two devices. Both of them are running their own version of local Realm database, but behind the scenes, they are synchronizing with the cloud and trying to make sure that the data is kept in sync between the two devices. The thing is that the Android and iOS, they logged in as anonymous users. If we check in the authentication or in app users, we see that we have 2 users right away here. And what I don't want to see the tasks created by one user in the application of a different one. I want everyone to manage their own tasks, and later on, by creating an account, you can share the same task between multiple devices, but only when you're signing as the same user, which signing in as a guest user will never happen. Guest users are always unique. So what we should do, we need to add some rules of how we want to synchronize data. We want to synchronize only data created by the user that is authenticated. And because our model, our task has this user ID, we want to say like synchronize only the tasks provided by this user. This can be accomplished by filtering in the subscription, but a better way is to completely to do this from permission standpoint and to completely avoid anyone having access to some data that is not theirs. And to do that, I'm going to first go to the device sync. In the configuration, close this one, scroll down and click here, edit queryable fields. This is something that I missed like when preparing, and I spent like an hour figuring out why I cannot do it. So from the collection, select our task and let's add the user ID as a queryable field, because we need this user ID to be used in the permissions to check if someone is allowed to do an operation on the task. Let's press save, and let's press save changes again. Save, and it was saved. Now I will go to our data access and I'm gonna go to the rules. Defining rules, next, got it. Let's go ahead and define some rules on the task database. There are some default rules here, like deny all access, read all, read and write all, but I'm interested in the other preset, this one. User can read and write their own data, and admins can read and write all data. So let's select this one to make sure that the data in task database is only being able to read and write by the user who created it. Let's create add preset role. We see that there is some issues because I will press cancel because we actually have to update it. And the issues are for the user. If I open it up, we see that the permissions here are working with an owner ID. In our case, we have user ID. So we need to change from owner ID to user ID. And what happens, like before inserting, deleting, or searching, it's going to check if the user ID of a task is equal to the ID of an authenticated user, and only then it will allow it to do. So let's click save now. Everything should work correctly. And let's go back to our applications. Let's try to, and I already see that it synchronizes correctly, even without reloading, even without anything. So this is my task, add, and this is Android task, add. So they are not shared because they are different users. So that's how we can limit what data is being able to sync on the device. One way to do it is using the rules and specifying what data a user has access to. Okay, perfect. The next step, yes, this was the synchronization only your items. The next step probably is going to be to add proper authentication. Like you use the application as a guest, But then you want to go ahead and create an account so that you can save this data and later be able to access it or sign in with the same account on different devices. For that, we need like proper email and password authentication. Let's go ahead in our application and let's create a new screen called login.tsx. Login.tsx. And here, I think I don't have a lot of time to actually implement the login screen. So let me check the login from here. Let me try to go with this one, and I'm gonna explain shortly what's happening here. And last step is to only connect like this icon from the top with the login screen. To do that, I'm going to wrap it inside the link component from Expo router. And here href is going to be login. So if I press login, I'm redirected to a page with an input for email and password. If I go to the login, I'm going to check like the rendering. The rendering has a text input for our email that saves the data in the email data. It has a text input for the password. It will show the errors. You're going to have access to this through the source code that I'm going to attach later in the description so that you can copy paste this screen, as I don't manage to build it from scratch. And it has two buttons. One of them is login, and this login. Let's do I'm gonna assign also here register style because I was not able to see the button. And yeah, it has two buttons. One of them is register, and for that we're calling a function called login with email, and we simply send email and password. And for the register button, we call register with email and password as well. Now these functions are taken from here, register and login with email and password. The register is from use email password off, and login with email and password from this hook. Both of them are coming from Realm React. So this is registration and login. So let's go ahead and try to register an account. I'm gonna use my email and a dummy password. Let's press register, and right after that we are redirected back to the project board, because what happens is after the registration, if registration is complete, we automatically log in that user. And if I go back here to my application, if I check up users now, we should see a new user using a provider email and password with this ID. So now I can go ahead. This is okay. That's not very good. I don't know what happened there. This is my account. Add task. So now this should be only for when we are signed in with the account of my email. We can check that on the Android. If I go ahead and log in with the same account, I should be able to access the same data. I will press login, save, and we see that we have access to the same data. That means that you can use the same application from different devices and they will synchronize between each other like this. As you can see, hello, hello. like this and so on. And if, for example, one of these devices will not have an internet connection, I will close the internet connection on Android because that's possible. I'll say new task while offline. Let's do add task. It's not going to be updated on iOS, but here, new task from iOS. Let's add some tasks from iOS as well. Let's maybe delete the this is my account task. And we see that on iOS, everything is good. Here, we do not have internet connection. So the data is not up to date yet. But the next time you're going to go ahead and connect to the internet, and as soon as you do that, pay attention to what's happening here. It will take a bit of time to connect to the internet, but as soon as that will happen, it should update. Let's see. Hello. New task while offline was added. New task from iOS is here. And the first one, the first task that we deleted is deleted. So now, as you can see, all the data is synchronized. And we can continue while online. It right away updates. And this is the power of the whole system that we have managed to build so far. That's what I'm proud of in the end. We have around 15 more minutes, and I'm thinking what to cover. I have like multiple lists, but that is probably not the most important part. What I wanted probably to cover, can we see how on this login screen, if I'm already logged in, can I do, I don't know, log out? On login screen. Let me try to do, let's create a new a new screen called profile.tsx. And here let's do export default function profile return view text profile React Native, and here and what I want to do is when I get to the login, or even before getting to the login, maybe in this link I can check here. No, I don't want to do it here. Look, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here figuring this out. You can do definitely better. I'm going to simply add a new icon there just to be able to see the profile screen. So I'm going to have the login and I'm going to have a profile. And in fact, this one user circle is for profile. And here is, I don't know, some kind of arrow for the login. Arrow font awesome. Sign in. Sign in. So again, this is not the best approach because you need either to go to show like the view flex direction row, either to show the profile screen or the login screen. Now, if I go to the profile, I will be redirected to the profile screen here. Perfect. I can go here in the profile and I can get information probably about the user. So user equal use user, which is a hook that we can import from use user equal import from realm React. So here I can do text style color white. And we can do user dot name. It's not there. User dot ID. Okay, user dot ID for now. What I want here actually is to try to do a sign out. So let's add a button with a title sign out. On press, what should happen? Probably using the use of, we can get access to the sign out function. Const something equal use of, and how to sign out. Realm React sign out. User.logout. Is it user.logout? User.logout. Let's go. Try sign out. Is not a function, of course. User user logout a user to log any user out, call the user on their user instance when a user logs out, or I can use logout from that is weird that it didn't work, but let's try the logout. Sign out, and we're back to the anonymous data, right? I am anonym. Add task, and if I'm gonna try to sign in with by DM at notjust.dev login, is going to be different. And if I go to profile and sign out, I am anonymous. So I'm going back to the anonymous user. What I wanted to do is whenever we are logging in, I wanted to connect, like, for example, if you work as an anonymous user, you have like tasks here, and when you create an account, you don't want to lose these tasks. You want to kind of move them from anonymous to your user there. So there is a way to connect identities. I'm not sure if we're going to manage to do that, but here, manage sync session, no, manage users, authenticate users, connect. Link user identities. So linking user identities is a way to link different identities to the same account. So user can, for example, sign in as a guest with email and also with Google, Facebook, and so on, and have the same account. So I think that works by using the link credentials after the register. So link credentials is imported from where? Link credentials, email and password, user.link credentials, set user identities. So this is the function that is inside the login screen. Credentials, is it imported from where? From Realm React. Where is it coming from? Is it outdated already? User.link. So we can get this user here. And when the user also changes, after logging in with or before, we need to do link or user.link Why use user is any? No user, realm user. Link identities. Link credentials. And link credentials expects credentials. And credentials is what? Yeah, I cannot get access to these credentials. But I believe it should be like this, email and password. So if I'm going to sign in right now with Vadim at notjust.dev. And let's check it here. Sync over local. Oh, you see? This user, if I'm checking here, devices, no, this is device ID. Yeah, I'm not sure actually why this is not working, but there is a way to link the credentials of the unauthenticated user with the authenticated user. But anyway, I'm gonna stop here because we're running out of time. Anyway, everything is working perfectly fine. We can sign in as we can work as a guest user, we can work as an authenticated user, everything synchronizes, everything works offline as well. And whenever we are back online, it manages the synchronization with the backend. That was an interesting experience. Really enjoy this project. I wished that we didn't have to struggle with that configuration issues with the Atlas services, but in the end it worked quite well. And I want to see where you guys are going to take this project from here, because this is just the beginning. This should give you an understanding of how you can set up this configuration and use it in your project, whatever that might be. So if you enjoyed this tutorial, make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and actually I'm gonna ask you a small thing. If you actually took value out of this tutorial, if you enjoyed this, it would really mean a lot to me if you can write a couple of nice words on Twitter and tag me at notjust.dev. We're collecting some testimonial for our upcoming course, and we want to showcase some words or the experience from our students from here from YouTube. So go to Twitter, say something nice about the tutorials that we have done, tag me, and we're gonna try to include it on our next website. If you have any questions right now, feel free, but we have around 2 minutes. We have to end it. Using a document picker, do we need to ask for permission? If I'm not mistaken, yes, you need. John is saying, I love this. All the tutorials don't do this part. They usually stop right here. Yes. Thank you very much. Someone is asking about syncing Postgres databases. That's probably something that I really want to get into as well, because this is really great, especially if you have a new projects or if you are already using MongoDB. But if you're using some kind of a Postgres database, in that case, you would need a different solution. So I'm gonna make sure to cover that as well. And if you want to send ideas, we have an idea board. There is a link in the description below where you can submit project ideas, features, tools that you want to learn more. And I'm gonna try to cover them in our next tutorials. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for being here with me. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'm gonna see you next week.